This
coming.
conference will now be recorded.
Is it getting close, or have you gotten any
Well, it was
notification or
supposed to
anything?
be. It was supposed to be here yesterday, but it was in Pennsylvania somewhere, Hagerstown. And I called them this morning, and it went through Hagerstown to Baltimore, and it was supposed to be down here this morning at 9, which they said it was, and they were supposed to deliver from 1 to 4. Well, that hadn't happened yet either, so we'll see what happens.
Hmm. Yeah, the anticipation will kill you.
Well, I forgot I had to rent the trailer, and I had to have somebody stand
Oh
by
yeah,
with me, and you get people to give up their day, and then they're just sitting
sure.
around, or
Yeah, that
that's
can be a nightmare.
yeah.
Luckily, I got the 35, and it was I'm in a cul-de-sac, so he wheeled it right in the garage and dropped it for me.
Yeah,
So I didn't have to deal with that.
I got to put it on a trailer and take it around back, put it in the shop.
Gotcha, gotcha.
It's complicated.
All right.
I was hoping
So
to have it so I could ask questions
I'll just,
today, but I don't have any questions now.
I got you. I got you. Yeah, we could have done
I'm
a
in the
little.
same boat.
Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
Gotcha.
Did you get anything from the trucking company or anything from what's her name there at Thunder?
Uh,
Yeah, I
Rebecca,
got the
Rhonda.
tracking number. Um, so I'm just waiting.
Gotcha. Yeah, and
Gave me
we've been
time to put in the circuit and
sure. I've created some new articles, and I might as well just pop those up real quick. Logistics. So it's a few. I've got this one that talks about how you know everything works and lead times and that kind of thing. And I'm still expanding on these, but I at least wanted to get a framework down. And then I've got a thing about problematic machine deliveries and what a textbook case should look like. Um, you see a lot of more to follow and coming soon in there. I just threw them together because I needed them to be published so that I could hand out some links. Um, and then like unboxing the Nova 63, we're going to address that because all the accessories are underneath. So we're gonna start expanding on all these and have more information on the logistics. Not so much as tracking because we hardly get that information either. But everything else we can prepare you for. We're working on some more expanded documentation on more of those types of things. So hopefully we'll get that out.
Ouch.
Yeah. So like I said, if anybody has any questions or anything, that's the primary thing. So feel free to pop them out there.
Hey, I just noticed that there's a Windows 11 coming out. Have you seen anything or anything that might cause some
I,
issues with burn or anything?
I'm going to stay far away from it for the first year, probably, and
Yeah,
not
Yeah.
even investigate it.
I've got the blue little dot on my screen wanting me to update.
Are you going to do it?
Hell no.
Getting a little feedback. So if you're not, yeah, there we go. I need to make sure I keep mine down too.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
too chickens. I'm worried about graphic software and stuff just not being compliant or not working with it.
yeah, it says a few of my things aren't quite there. So I'm not even going to wait. There's ways around it. They say you can make it run it anyway. I saw them running on a
Yeah.
Pentium 4, I think. But
Well, my computer's more than capable of running it. It's just having graphic software that's older and not knowing if it's going to become compliant or not.
yeah. So
Hello, Travis.
you're
Darn that mute button.
No volume there, Travis.
Yep. You got me now, though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had another heck of a long after show.
Oh,
last
did you?
week, wasn't it?
Yes, we did.
I think it was with
It was
Arthur,
like
wasn't it?
Blame,
2.5 hours, something like that.
blame me. Blame me. It was my fault.
Yeah, we had a good long one.
I might have to
I
go back
actually-
and watch
I had,
that.
a, I had a question about that. I was thinking about the problem with the negative air in that room that's got the water heater and the furnace. And I was curious, is it possible to connect the machine I'm clearing out a spot in my garage, by the way, anyway, because I think I've been defeated on this, but it just occurred to me, is it possible out of the back of the machine to put like a T-fitting that would suck air in from outside and also blow through the other side and exhaust out of the room outside as well? Is it possible to make
Then
up
you're
the negative air from outside the room as opposed to inside?
well, you would take away from the ability of your cabinet to be able to draw air across it like it's supposed to if you do that, because the path of least resistance is basically what's going to happen.
Yeah, you would actually be pulling air from the front. You'd have to build a plenum for the front of your laser
Yeah.
to go over top of the grating. And still don't know. Being in that room, I still don't know if it's worth the risk.
Yeah.
Right. Well, like I said, I'm clearing out of space in the garage anyway, figuring that, I'm pretty much relegated to that just because it's about the only indoor space that's not, like a living area, and I'm not prepared to take up living space with with a machine that size and
And the
everything.
more I thought about it, you said the area above your garage is conditioned, correct?
There's a bedroom above the garage, yeah.
Yeah, that thing should be easy peasy to heat because you got a conditioned space above it. And as long as it's outside, which I would imagine the outside wall is insulated because of it being conditioned space above it. So heating that garage should be very simple for you.
It's not a big deal. I've got, in fact, you showed me the heater over your shoulder there. I've got something that looks just like it. It's a 220 forced air, heater, and it does a good job. It's just, I'm trying to figure out a way to bring it inside, just because it does get cold out there in the winter and hot in the summer, and I don't have AC out there, and I wouldn't plan on doing that necessarily unless I was going to just take over the garage and incorporate it into the inside of the house, but.
I would
But
just use
yeah,
a dehumidifier.
it's not that hard to keep warm. And if we get a cold snap here, it's usually for a couple of weeks. And I don't think it's ever really gotten below freezing in my garage. It gets down to, like upper 30s, I'm sure, and uncomfortable, certainly I've got a wood shop out there that I work in, which is why I got the heater to start with. But yeah, I think that's where it's gonna end up there anyway.
Mhm.
And then I had sent, I don't know if you remember, Brian, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, I sent you information about having found a guy who was selling a Mars 90.
Yeah, did that go on did that go through the ticket system, I thought, or
I didn't send the ticket. What I did do though is to to confirm what it was I was looking at.
right. It looks like one,
I did a
yeah.
FaceTime. I did a FaceTime with this guy yesterday, and it is what it is. It's a Thunder Mars 90. It's almost identical to the 51. I think it's got the same size bed, and anyway, I'm gonna take a look at it. He's about a 2-hour drive from where I am, but it seems to be in lightly used, relatively good condition. He said he made the fatal mistake of the first cold snap they had when he got the machine. He lost his tube. It cracked, froze and cracked. So it's got a relatively new tube in it, and he did a little demonstration in the FaceTime yesterday. It seems to be functioning, but I'm going to go take a closer look at it over the weekend. But I was just curious, if you've been around long enough that you're familiar at all with the Mars series of machines.
I'm familiar enough that the very first Thunder I saw was, I think, a Mars 90. And I was super duper impressed. I had ULS machines, had some Gravigraphs and some others like that, but then I primarily had Chinese clones. And when I saw that one, that's the one that that made me think, is this really a Chinese machine? Because it didn't look like anything I'd ever seen. It was, had actual mounts in it and was using real metal and, was sturdy. So,
well, now, were you the one that wrote the article on your, is that your website that you run
on that. About going to Clarksville and going to see that Mars 90.
I was searching in vain for the follow-up article. I couldn't find it anywhere. You really hooked me with the first part of that article.
The follow-up article is I started working for Thunder.
Okay.
So, But that's my extent. I mean, I have some documentation. China, working direct with China may be better on one of those because they're a lot more familiar with it. I mean, you can go through our systems and they can get
Right.
on there, but support. We've got access to the diagrams and all of that stuff. So it's not totally foreign. I just haven't ever jumped down that rabbit hole and looked at a lot of the differences and stuff, which a
Right.
lot of it
So
is very similar.
should I contact them and find out about parts and accessories and that kind of stuff, or do you think that's the kind of thing that they have still available? I mean,
I think most of that stuff could possibly still be available. It wouldn't hurt to check with them. And the way the support ticket system works for us is identical to the way they have. They ended up getting the same system that we have because they liked it so much.
Right.
So you have to be careful because even in the documentation and the manuals and such, it all says support at thunderlaser.com or sales at thunderlaser.com. That's going to put you into their system directly. All
Right.
of our stuff will be thunderlaserusa.com. So,
Okay.
yeah, if you wanted to, just go direct to the source, I'd email support at thunderlaser.com and say, I'm looking
Okay.
at a Mars 90. Can you tell me, if the common parts are still available, yada, yada. And they'll be glad. They'll have a better answer for you on that because I've never worked on the 90s and don't know any history about them or anything.
What do you
On
think
the
the
Mars
odds are that
series.
like the lens tubes and everything are all basically the same diameter and fit?
I think the Nova series made improvements on the Mars, but it's built off that system. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's typically their approach. So you may
Right.
find that you still have 21 millimeter lens tubes and the
Right.
25 millimeter. Yeah. So I think you'll see a lot of consistency there.
Okay. Yeah, because like the rotary attachment from the documentation that I could find online seemed real similar, if not really pretty much the same. It seemed to be
Yeah.
located in the same place. And
They'll be different because those should be running, I think that 5-pin. Those actually
Well,
might even be old enough. They might be running that 3-pin system.
the three phase, that
Yep.
3-pin
Yep.
phase, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah,
that right,
someone had,
Jason?
someone had asked about that, about if the 3-pin will work with the Rotoboss or whatever, or the Pi or whoever it was. But yeah, if the motor's put on there right, then yes,
Yeah.
it'll function just the same.
this was that was the controller that's on his. You recognize that?
That's a Ruidia.
That's
Yeah,
just a Ruida controller.
Yeah. The controller, the DSP actually looks a little different though. So it's an earlier version, of course. I think
Right.
I thought it was a Top Wisdom at first, looking at the DSP itself.
Let's say
No, it's the same model that's on my Nova 63.
Yeah, my Nova 24 has the same panel.
Is it?
Mhm.
It should say on the DSP controller what model controller's in it in the electronics bay.
So it's funny. The guy owns a machine, but he doesn't. I think I know more about these machines at this point than even he does. I asked him about like what version is it, and he's he doesn't really know. He doesn't even know how to find out or how to figure it out.
Do you know if
Just
he
knows how to
uses
turn
RD
on
Works with it?
Huh?
Do you know if he uses RD Works with it or even Lightburn?
RD Works V8.
Okay, so yeah, it is a Ruida based controller. So
Okay,
Lightburn
so
will
does
work with it
do you
too.
know, will that work with Lightburn? Does it matter?
Oh yeah,
It should.
will.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'll work.
That's why
just
he's
fine.
selling it, Arthur. He doesn't know anything about it.
Right.
Oh yeah,
If he did, he would keep it.
Well,
I've seen quite a few people do that.
On his listing, it says that it's 210 volt. So I said, okay. I said, why did you have 210 volt? He said, well, he said, my brother told me that for a machine like that, you're better off with the reliability of 210. So I said, okay. I said, well, show me the plug. So he shows me the plug, and now I'm not an electrician, but it sure as hell looked like a 3-prong 110 type plug with 3 prongs with a ground.
So you've got to watch that.
I have a 220 out. I have a 220 socket, receptacle in my garage for my table saw, and I said, I think your socket should look like this. And I showed him, and he said, no. And then he showed me his, the wall socket, the receptacle, and it was a twin. It looked to me like twin 110 20 amp socket.
So you have to watch out for that. And the reason I say that is the Mars machines were originally sold directly from China.
Yep.
That's what we
and
got.
they were wired as 220 volts, but their 220 volts is not the same as ours. Here, 220 volts is you have 210 hot legs. Over there, you have one single 220 hot leg. And so in order to run that, you would actually have to get uh, inverter thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
that
can't
will
Well,
convert it.
actually ramp
it
up to
it'll
100.
run them. It'll
Yeah.
run it. It just changed the frequency's off. It's 60 hertz instead of 50.
Yep. Well, then, yeah. So you just get that inverter, which will shift it'll combine two 220 legs into one single 220 and convert it from 60 hertz down to 50 hertz, so it'll run properly. Now, with that said, there's a lot of people that have rewired those lasers to run 110 volt, but you have to remember at 220 versus 110, your amperages don't line up. So 10 amps at 110 is actually 5 amps at 220, which means you've got to completely gut and rewire the whole machine to convert it to 110.
Right.
So just be aware of that you might have to get a little transformer to increase your voltage, which in your case, on this one, it'll probably take two 20 amp 110 circuits to get the 220 what the laser is going to need. And that might honestly be the reason he's selling it, is just because, those inverters are not very cheap, and they tend to burn out a bit too.
Okay, but he literally had this thing plugged into the wall. I saw
Yeah.
where he had it plugged in. He showed me the receptacle, which,
Huh.
like I said, looked
The
like
Mars that
twin.
Mars that I saw was 220 also, and it was plugged in to
But
just
did it
a
have
20, 30
you're
amp.
showing me on your screen here. That's is that a 220?
No, this is a 15 amp, 110 volt 15 amp. This is a NEMA 515P. So that's the
Okay,
standard wall outlet that most people have in a residence.
right.
So this is a NEMA 520P. This is a 20 amp, but it's still 110. This is a NEMA 620P. It's 220.
Yeah,
Can you tell the difference between that one and that one?
I can see that he's got, it's a T slot on the there's one on the right and one on the left.
Yep.
Yeah, they changed direction.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
they're just swapped. That's the only difference between a 110 and a 220 plug. So what I'm getting at is this nomenclature is really weird. It can be goofy. See, there's the difference right there. But if you can identify the plug, we can identify provided it was wired to NEC code, we can, if you take a picture of the plug and stuff and send it to us, we can help determine what he is running it on. But it likely
Right.
is a 220 machine.
Like I said, I saw the plug. There's no question.
Yeah.
It's two.
So, and most of the Chinese
looks like a
lasers,
110.
yeah, and you'll hear that thing a lot about, oh, well, you can't use the plugs in the back of those Chinese lasers because all the wiring will burn up. And the reason is those are made, just like Travis said, primarily for the 220 marketplace. All of Europe and most of the places they sell these, besides North America, it's a 220
Right.
machine. So they have to
In
put
fact,
bigger
he had
wires.
he had his chiller plugged into the second receptacle on that tube.
Yeah, because it can handle it. So, but Thunders have to be wired that way, but we have it done from our factory. That's what's different than a lot of these other ones. They do it here. We already have the factory, have the correct wiring for the 110. That's why all the wires are bigger in the Thunders than you see in all the clones, because you don't need big wire in the Chinese machines because you're pulling half the current through them.
So aside from the plug, is there something like at the power source that would indicate how it's wired? If I took a picture of something inside the machine, because I'm going to see the
Possibly.
machine.
Yeah, take a lot of pictures. Some of the components you find in there, like the low voltage power supplies, for instance, may have a switch on the side where you can use them as 220 or 110.
Okay.
So that would be an indication. Some are not. So you have to
Right.
be careful, and you also have to be careful, and we'll know it because it's a Mars. But for instance, one guy wanted to order a Nova series machine, a current one with 220, and we'll do that. But if you ever call us and say, hey, I need a power supply, ours are not selectable. They're 110 only. So if you have a 220 Nova and you call in to tech support and say my power supply blew up, oh, we'll send you one right out. We're going to send you a 110 version and it won't work.
Right,
So
okay.
you can run into things like that. But we know yours is a Mars. We know there's enough difference there that we're going to investigate that before we just start telling you what to get.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
If you're not
Yeah,
confused
at least
enough,
I
we
felt
could
confident.
jump down a couple more rabbit holes if you want to look at some wiring diagrams. Because I'm
Yeah,
pretty
like I said,
confused about these
the whole
plugs myself.
if I had enough confidence in my own ability to understand, but I certainly know, a standard wall outlet. I'm wondering if he's not confusing 20 amp
With
requirement for
200
20
volt.
amp with, having
That's
a 220.
So yeah, when you go visit, I'll tell you some things to look at. Get a picture, a nice clear picture of the control box inside where all the green connectors are, and there should be a label on it with some numbers. That's the DSP controller. Take a picture of the serial number label if you can. Take a picture of the plug. And then just to the electronics bay, there's a TL timer. There may be a TL timer in there. Just a few shots of the bay, and also the label on the tube. You want to be
Or
sure.
you can look on the side of the power supply too, and you should see.
Yeah, take a couple
the
shots of labels on power supplies. Yeah.
Because it might be a selectable 110, 220.
Yeah.
Right.
If
You
you've
could
got a
look and see.
multimeter, you have a multimeter, just check the wall outlet too.
Labels on because it might be multiple 110.
Can't hear anything they're saying. Am I the only one that can't hear that?
I can't hear it either.
Someone's
They're
talking and I can't hear anything.
They're
they're
lagging
saying.
out really bad there.
Yeah.
I did when I had him on the FaceTime. I was taking stills on my phone, and I saw that he's got an SPT
Okay.
tube.
That's standard, pretty much.
That
The
was
80
that
watts
was the
are
replacement
REC
tube that
now.
he got.
But yeah, SPT's in 99% of our machines, or 90%.
Okay.
Everything but the 3580 has an SPT tube in it.
I think they sent it to him when he froze his tube up. I think he
Mhm.
called them, and they were the ones that sent him the new tube. So
Probably so.
How old is the new tube?
I think it's been in the machine since last winter, or after the incident, about last winter. And according to him, the reason he's selling it is because he's gotten so busy at work that he just hasn't had time to to use the machine, which was really more of a hobby thing for him.
So that's a big machine for a once in a while hobby.
Right. Well, he's asking 4,000. I don't know if that's fair. I don't know what those machines cost to have shipped from China. I know that there's all kinds of duties and tariffs and stuff like that.
What size bed is it?
It's the equivalent of a 51. I guess it's
Okay.
36 by 24.
So, I mean, if $4,000, shoot, yeah. I mean, I'd say that's a good
What's
price.
the wattage?
80 watt.
I mean, I'd
So it's
say
got a C90.
That's
I'd
it.
say 4K is a good price for it then. I mean, if everything works, as long as everything works as advertised, I would say it's pretty good.
Right.
For the size of it and what it is.
And everything else is stock except for the chiller. He's got the 5,000 chiller.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got the lead shine motors in it and everything.
Oh yeah.
So
I would talk him down, tell him you'll give him 3. I mean,
right. Well, before I go out and rent a trailer and a truck, I'm going to drive down, take a look, make sure that the thing, you can see that I wasn't sure if that looks like the same size, or the tube there for the lens.
Yeah.
I don't know if
I had a chance to get one. I think it was the same one back before I knew what lasers were when I was first getting into this, and I could have got one for $2,500. And I didn't know what it was because it wasn't anything I was familiar with. I knew about Thunder, I knew about like Boss and Epilogue and all them other people, but I never heard of Mars. And so I mean that was probably a missed opportunity, but
Yeah,
those-
I'd take anything that had a Thunder sticker on it for $2,500. I don't care what it was.
well, see, this one was completely stripped down. It didn't have any decals, no warning decals.
Gotcha.
I mean, they took everything off of it, so I didn't know.
Yeah.
I know it looked like that, the gray and
That,
kind of off-white
the
color.
pictures don't have any indication except for right there on the look control. Oh, I don't have it on right now. There's one little label on the factory images that they're showing. Kind of over where the dual air assist would be today. On that front
Yeah,
panel.
it
That's
says-
the
it
only
says-
marking on it.
Thunder Laser Systems, but it's got the same lightning bolt logo that
Mhm.
they're still using now.
Yeah. I'm sure it's probably legit. I've never seen an actual clone that I can verify of somebody actually theoretically cloning a Thunder. I haven't seen one. It may have happened, but
It'd be pretty hard to do, I'd imagine.
we'd catch it pretty quick because we
yeah.
usually ask for serial numbers
Yeah.
before we do service. So
I got a quick question.
yeah.
I was reading over not to interrupt the other story here. I was reading
No,
over
go
the startup literature, and it said don't change anything. But I've changed my blower from the original blower that came, and I'm using an external air system. So does that matter? I mean, there was something in your literature that said don't change anything.
Yeah.
Use what came with it first to test it or something. I don't know.
Right.
Well,
I'd do that
probably-
because once in a blue moon, you'll get a bad fan or the connector won't be pushed in all the way or, something like that. And then you won't ever notice. And when you go to add an external components, people tend to do all of it at once, like put their air assist on and then their exhaust and then all the factory stuff's gone. And when something doesn't work right, it's harder to diagnose. So, on first initial startup, we just recommend that you use all the factory equipment so that you can put it through the paces, make sure that everything functions properly, and then add your accessories one at a time, just as a best practices kind of thing more than anything else.
Yep.
So, but if you skip that part, that's okay.
And what you can
Okay,
do,
I got
John,
I got it wired with the other thing, all set up with the external control for the blower. So I was just going to do that.
Well, the biggest thing is making sure people, when you're talking to them, they're aware that you've done these things. Because most people, like Brian said about the power supply, they're not going to bother to ask you if it's a 110 or 220. They're just going to send you a 110. And if you say there's something wrong with my air system, and nobody knows that's an affinity air or whatever, that kind of throws a wrench in everything. And people are trying to walk you through it just to find out a day later that something was different on it. So just making
Okay.
people aware of it.
Yeah, that's best practices, like he was saying. But if you skip it, that's okay. We just try to eliminate variables as much as possible and try to streamline the things for issues that we see. So you don't have to follow it. I know that there's a majority, or maybe not a majority. I know there's quite a few people out there that never opened one single article about anything. They put it together and started using it. So it's
And
there
never
if you
do
want it.
anything first.
I try to educate myself before I screw it up. Doesn't mean I don't do the rest, but I try to
Sure.
educate myself first.
YouTube University.
That's it.
Right.
Great place, best university there is, man.
Yep.
Yep.
They didn't
I-
start offering degrees. I think I got a
No,
master's.
I've made sure I've read every single piece of documentation. I've never changed anything on my lasers. There's no modifications, nothing.
Nothing.
Right? Yeah,
Not
okay.
at all.
Yeah, we
We've
believe that,
already
Travis.
revoked Travis's warranties.
Right? As soon
John,
as
I
the
have
only-
warranties on these.
as soon as Travis unboxed them, his warranties were gone.
Right.
Pretty much,
Tail
yeah.
light warranty.
I listen to you talk about stuff, Travis. You're really in deep, so I know you were playing.
But on the flip side, though, I mean, that says something, though. I mean, if I can, tweak these machines as much as I've had, and I've never had a single part go bad. I mean, to give you an idea, I'm still on my original laser lens for my 2-inch.
That's been a while.
I got
Yeah,
one that's about
5 years
years
on
old.
that lens. I'm half tempted to replace it just because, but it's still perfectly clear.
Hmm.
John, the only thing that I would do is your blower and stuff. I would plug them in independently just to make sure they work. So that way,
Right, yeah, you talked about, I got the blower that you recommended here. I put it up and it has its own control, and you'd said, go ahead and plug it in a socket by itself, not plug it in the machine, right?
no,
Yep.
I was talking about the blower that comes with your machine.
Right?
Just go ahead and just run it. Just make sure it runs for warranty purposes. Because if it was DOA, at least you can get a new one for a backup.
Okay.
Yeah, I said that too, and I have, I think, 4 of those type of blowers still sitting in the box around my
Yep.
shop. So if anyone ever needs one of those, let me know.
You can make a hell of a deal, huh?
Yeah, probably just the cost of shipping just to get it out of my shop.
Brian's wheels are turning right now. He's like, yeah, I could use some
They
of
are.
those.
I'm spinning in my chair. That's just what I need. 4 more fans.
Yeah.
Well, you never know when someone might need one.
Yeah.
Hey, it works really good for cleaning out dust out of your shop because the day I just test ran it, I had the door open. I was like, oh, hell, I've now found a new way to clean out my shop with all the dust. I pointed outwards.
You know what else it's good for is when you drill a hole in a tree stump and you're going to burn it out, you can force induce air to that and really, really accelerate the process. As long as you don't catch your neighbor's dry grass on fire. Which
I'm actually getting I'm putting one of mine in. We have burn barrels up here that we use, and so I'm actually piping one of those into the bottom of the burn barrel to make a little kind of forge type thing.
Nice.
Are we speaking from experience, Brian?
No. Not me. So.
You guys were talking about the tubes freezing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you put antifreeze in this thing?
You can. I don't recommend it. I don't like it. Sometimes there's not a choice. We recommend the RV antifreeze if you're going to do that over automotive antifreeze, because ethylene glycol has some stuff in it that's corrosive to the components of these cooling systems. And S&A Chiller even says use
that's what I was
automotive
curious
antifreeze.
about.
Yeah, they recommend to use RV or actual automotive antifreeze, but then they say wash it out as soon as you're done with it, and that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So RV antifreeze is usually the solution if keeping your climate, your ambient temperature around it at a steady temperature doesn't work for you.
Or just fill it full of vodka.
Well,
I mean,
there are some engineered fluids that we are looking at. Wayne Rees in the UK puts a bunch of that out. It's an engineered coolant that is non-conductive, and they're running that straight in their lasers. It's got the viscosity of water kind of, so it doesn't tax the pump like that RV stuff does. It's a little thick, and it can make your pump work a little hard. That's a magnetic pump, so it can tax that over time. But I haven't ever had anybody here try it. But we're looking for guinea pigs. We could find out. Was I supposed to look and see what that stuff was? I don't think I ever found it because we talked about that. Let me put that in my notes.
If you'll warranty my chiller, I'll try anything you want.
Yeah, well, this is made for industrial, chilling applications too. So I don't think it'll hurt the chiller. I haven't asked China about it, but Wayne says they've been running that stuff for a decade over there.
I mean, you could probably. I would think you'd probably be able to put rubbing alcohol in there too, but the only problem with that is it's kind of flammable.
Yeah.
But I mean, but
ended up burning everything with rubbing alcohol all around. It makes you kind of wonder a little.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and just don't do the mistake that I did when I first got my first laser, which was my Boss. First thing I did is I filled it up with, I was like, oh, I want ultra pure water. I don't want any contaminants. So I went with deionized water. And do not do that. Just standard steam distilled.
That'll get its ions from other things.
Yes, it will. Ask me how I know that.
I just use tap water for mine, to be honest with you.
Yeah, tap water is fine.
About once a year, what I do is I'll get those clear inline fuel filters, and I'll stick it on there, and I'll run it for about a month of use, take it off, and then put it back on. You'd be amazed how much one of the little filters catch, because like you get that little bit of algae and stuff that builds up in there, and then that filter will catch all that stuff.
Yep. That's one thing I wish Thunder still did. So when I got my 63, they actually came with an inline filter on the water thing that you could unscrew, change out the filter on. And when I got my 35, they didn't do that anymore.
Well, because they get obstructed really easy.
Makes sense.
Problem was, well, that's what I'm saying. Within about 30 days, that filter is useless when I do it. Because I'll run it honestly until the alarm goes off, where the water's not flowing.
All right, I'm revoking your warranty too. Make a note.
I haven't done that to a Thunder. Just for the record. But
If you run the
yeah.
antifreeze, is it 100% or is it 50-50? How do you do that?
Somebody said that if you don't put it in 100%, it's not effective. I don't know.
No,
The common
No,
consensus across the Chinese glass tube laser world over the past 5 or 6 years has been 50-50 mix, has been the
Okay.
common consensus.
yeah. What I would do, I mean, if it was me, I would actually they make a RV antifreeze that's a -50 instead of the standard -25. And I'd get that higher range stuff and then mix it to like 1-to-4 ratio at a 25% dilution. And you'll save a little bit more money that way, and you're not adding as much of the antifreeze in there. It's just a little bit different compound. It's usually blue instead of pink, but it tends to, from what I've seen, because I use that stuff on my boat when I winterize it, and it flows more like water than the pink stuff does. That pink stuff's really kind of like sugar water, where the other stuff has, I don't know what in it, but I would think it would work better.
And that's coming from somebody that's probably got 5 feet of snow on the ground right now.
No,
Already.
actually, we warmed back up. All of our
Anybody
snow
with
melted again.
backyard knows
I don't
what
know, it
he's
looks
talking
like Robert looks the coldest here in the pictures. He got a
Holy
jacket on. He
cow.
was cold. It's 80 degrees here.
Wow.
$40.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll stick with other means.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the solutions. Yeah, it's not cheap, but it darn sure won't freeze, and it darn sure won't arc down the laser tube. So
That's a 20-liter container, it says. So
Right.
that's a lot.
That's
it
a gallon.
is. So I don't know. And there's other sources, and there's a guy even in near Quitman
Wait.
that makes engineered fluids. This may be the place,
Mhm.
and I even talked to him once about trying it. And if it worked, maybe we get a 55-gallon drum of it and sell appropriate quantities. You know,
So if
just what
that's
you
a
need.
20 liters, 20 liters a gallon?
5 gallons.
5 gallons, about.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that ain't no
Um,
5 gallon.
That ain't no 5-gallon jug.
Yeah, that's why I was
Nope.
deceived. I was going, I'm sitting here
No.
blinking my eyes going,
You
yeah, I
can't-
can't
you
see
know,
nothing anyway.
Have you been to a fast food restaurant lately? Are you really looking at the pictures?
Yeah.
You know, the other thing that might work, I've never tried it, but they've got that new dielectric coolant that they use for server farms and
PC
Coinbase.
cooling. And yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
would probably work, and that's not
So-
nearly that
Yeah.
cost.
Yeah, right. And some of those are some of the ones that we were looking at too. I had started looking more toward industrial commercial applications because they have industrial chillers, in the field that they could test this on. But a lot of the computer engineered cooling fluids are also non-conductive or below that threshold. I have a document on it, on additives, and it's just some aggregate information.
Why doesn't it not surprise me that Brian has an article on it?
Right.
And
I swear that's all he does is type in the middle of the night, all night long.
You don't have an
He's like-
article on anything else.
He like
Yeah.
geek researches every single possibility.
So yeah, here's another example of some of that stuff. That's some of that PC coolant stuff, and there's various, manufacturers or whatnot. But and it goes into a little bit about the conductivity and what kind of thresholds you're looking at. In my secret recipe for open loop systems, and don't ever put water wetter in it. That'll make bad things happen. That makes
Yeah.
it super conductive and doesn't do a thing to cool it. So.
Okay, why do you have Dawn dish soap?
That acts as a surfactant and as a detergent, so it reduces surface friction to get rid of those little bubbles, and the detergent effects also.
It cleans the ducks swimming in
Hey,
your.
where was this document?
Chiller.
Is it on the
It's
Info
it's on the site. You can just do a search for
laser water
additive.
coolants and additives? Okay, thanks.
I can link it.
What do you recommend doing? Just putting distilled water in, or you really recommend doing
I just
something
use
else?
plain distilled, and I haven't changed my water in almost 2 years.
Yeah,
Yeah, I use regular tap water.
yeah.
Yeah, I use distilled.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the only thing with tap water. If you're
Well, my
on a
tap
well,
water's not my tap water's not city, so
No, I mean if you tap water, it's the only thing I would concern me is if you're sitting on a well. You got
Oh,
high
well, but
iron content.
I
But
don't know how
it's
accurate
softened
this
and all that.
is. because my napkin math is probably a little off. And if anybody sees this off, but I did some calculations on the tube volume, where the water actually, because the whole tube, a lot of people call and say, hey, there's no water in the tube, but the water only travels in the center portion. So I tried to roughly calculate that and get some capacities. So there's an article on that too that I'll post.
Well, the one thing I've done in the cold, if I know I'm going to leave it down for a good bit, is I'll just unplug the hoses from the tube, let them drain out.
Yeah,
and
just
then
drain it. Drain the
leave it.
chiller too. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the chiller, that would take quite a while to get that cold enough to.
Not in the pump or the flow sensor, and they're plastic. They'll crack in a heartbeat.
Well, yeah, I haven't had any problems.
Yeah, well,
But
you're
if I
in
knew-
Florida too. You're not
Well, I
in
know.
Minnesota.
We still get freezing weather down here, right?
Oh yeah, I know you do, and we do, believe it or not.
We get to like 30 degrees like for a couple of days. Come on,
I'll
man.
get to 10 sometimes, and the next day it'll be 85.
Oh yeah,
So.
it gets down freezing one night, frost or ice on the water, and by the afternoon everything's
I
thawed
think
out.
I've seen 85-degree temps before.
Yeah, right.
on the weather.
On the Weather
on
Channel.
Somebody else's
on the
weather.
Weather Channel.
So, all right.
See
Well, does
what he
anybody
has
else
to-
have any questions about anything?
Hey, Brian, I got one.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I've been doing a lot of study on vinyl with the stalls, and they got laser vinyl. You can laser cut it. Is that okay? Long as
If
it's
If you're talking about the heat treat stuff, typically it is non-PVC, even though they still call it vinyl, and that is okay. You want to check your MSDS sheet just to make sure that it does not contain vinyl, but I believe you're correct. And Sizer Easy Weed is another one of those.
Yep. So any type of heat transfer vinyl, if it's made by Stahls, Sizer, or if it's made by specialty materials, contain no PVC, and they're 100% laser safe.
is it okay for the laser though? Even cutting inside, it won't put off no smoke or anything.
It'll smell a little bit. I mean, you'll get a little bit of smoke just because it's burning it. But
Yeah,
it's
you're
not,
still
it's
burning
not toxic.
stuff. But yeah,
you're
and
still
then
gonna get smoke and everything, but
yeah, and Stahls actually carries a normal adhesive vinyl that is laser safe as well. And I've seen it around at a couple other places. I do not know who the actual manufacturer is. Your big manufacturers, 3M, Oracal, and I should know the other one because I use them.
Yeah, I use Stahls and I use
Sign Warehouse,
Warehouse.
whatever they use.
Avery, they're
Yeah, so Avery and 3M and those ones, their adhesive vinyls do contain PVC and they are not laser safe.
so
But someone
Oracal
out there
makes one that isn't. I didn't know Oracal made one that was non.
No, Oracal does. All Oracal is PVC based. Same with Avery.
Okay.
Yeah, so Oracal, let's see, Oracal, 3M, Avery, and why can I not? And Arlon, that's the other one. All four of those manufacturers are the main guys, and all of their adhesive vinyls contain PVC in them. So those are not laser safe. But somewhere out there, there is a manufacturer that it is doing adhesive vinyls without PVC.
Yeah, I think Caesar makes their own, don't they, or they buy it?
No, so Sizer makes theirs, and Specialty Material makes theirs, and then 3M buys theirs. They actually have theirs made over in two different plants. One plant is in the USA that is owned by 3M, and then a lot of it is made over in China that is contracted out. Avery makes their stuff in the USA. And Arlon makes their stuff in the USA and also a plant that they own over in China.
Yeah,
You're gonna invest in vinyl. I would just recommend getting a cutter.
Yeah.
If you go to the website on Stahls, it will tell you it's laser ready.
Yeah.
And heat transfer warehouse. My biggest deal is I'm fixing to do a lot of glitter for Christmas because I got some ornaments that I'm selling. And I've seen a lot of people using glow forges. They're cutting it, they're putting it on wood already. They heat press it on wood, and then they cut the wood out with the glitter already on it.
So what I can tell you on that is save yourself a lot of headache and sell your products a little bit more or a little bit at a higher price, they have acrylic that has non-PVC based glitter embedded in the acrylic and make your ornaments out of acrylic. They sell for about twice the price. Your cost is only about 20% more or so. In the long run, they'll be faster for you to produce. They come out with nicer finished edges, and the perceived value is tremendous because not many people are using acrylic on them yet.
Okay.
Why would you be cutting vinyl with a laser instead of a silhouette or a cricket?
When you're getting into really fine details, so somewhere around here I've got one. So I've actually ran it before, and I can hit down to about a half a pixel width on my detail when I laser engrave heat transfer vinyl. So somewhere around here I've got a picture, or it's a little ship that's about this big that I put on a shirt, and it has all the line. It's an old pirate ship, and you can see all the rope lines going down. And there's no way that you would ever be able to do that off of a silhouette cricket or any type of cutter.
Plus,
something like that.
It would be a nightmare too.
What
So,
lens are you using for that?
What was that?
What lens are you using for that? Because I mean, you're not going to get that small of a beam.
No. So, but what you're doing is, because you're getting rid of all the material that isn't there, your beam width isn't as much of a concern. So where those little ropes are, you just stop if this is your rope, your beam is stopping here.
You just offset the beam.
Correct.
Inside or outside the design then.
Yeah, because I was using just a standard 2-inch lens. But the other drawback to that is you've got to run that stuff at such a high DPI that it's not cost effective to laser out heat transfer vinyl. I mean, it's fun to do just to say you've done it, but when it takes 8 to 10 minutes for a 4x4 square patch with high detail,
well,
there goes all your profit.
The flip side of that is, if you're doing a small high detail thing like that, if you let the laser do it, it may take a little longer, but you're not weeding them. You can go straight out of the laser and apply them.
That is true as well.
Because pulling out those little, especially HTV, man.
That's why I just use a vinyl printer, and then I ain't got to worry about weeding anything out.
Well, a heat transfer, you got to peel that stuff off, and it's hard to do. It's not like the regular stuff.
Oh, it's actually easy to do if you know how to do it.
Well, I don't know how to do it because I always use the laser to do that stuff too.
I've got a giant heat table that clips the sheets down, and it warms up the adhesive so it doesn't stick.
There you go.
And the best thing is if you can get an underglow table. That way you're not sitting there trying to find out where all the little pieces
and then there's
are.
You can preheat it for a second too, I guess. Just pop it in the press for a second and warm it up a little before you go to weed it. But it sure is better not to weed it at all.
Yeah.
Of the heat transfer vinyls that you mentioned, do you have a preference?
Specialty materials, hands down.
Specialty materials?
Yep.
Is it calendared?
Huh?
Is it calendared material?
Heat transfer vinyl is done a little bit different. So technically, all heat transfer vinyl is calendared, the way that it's processed. But it doesn't really. It's not nearly as important as it is. Like when you're dealing with sheets of vinyl that are going on a car or sign.
Right.
Your calendar is going to shrink. Your cast won't.
Right.
Yeah, heat transfer vinyl doesn't really care as much
because it's on a fabric typically.
Yeah.
Anyway. And it's being melted
and it's
on.
already got a lot of stretch built into it, all that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, by nature, all heat transfer vinyl is calendared.
Hey, Travis, have you tried taffeta? Have you done any taffeta cutting with a laser?
Taffeta cutting.
Taffeta? Taffeta is like a felty kind of a fabric. I've seen that they have heat transfer taffeta, and you can actually do like layered multicolor type designs. It's the kind of thing that would be like on a baseball jersey.
You can just do that with regular heat transfer.
Twill, right? Twill. I'm saying taffeta. I mean twill.
Yeah, we do a ton of that. So yeah, we actually buy our twill by the rolls, which is how, just give you an idea of how much we actually go through. But yeah, we do. So we've got a lot of different twill. We do some that are straight felt. And so we've got a product that we do that's envision like a Leatherman's jacket with the numbers on it or the high school initials. But what we'll do is before we actually sew it onto a jacket, we laser cut out the letters, and then we actually go and laser engrave on top of the felt at a really low power and a high speed. And it actually melts it down a little bit and gives a nice texture to it where you can actually see it. We laser engrave on jeans, all t-shirts, all sorts of weird stuff.
Is there a Twill brand that has a heat transfer adhesive that you use?
So for starting off, I would probably go with Stahl's, but they are by far not the cheapest. Once you get into the point where you can start buying rolls of it, I'd go to Twill. We get ours from Twill USA.
All right.
Travis, what I was talking about, I've got some designs I bought off Etsy. What it is, it's a two-piece snowman. So your back layer will be one solid piece, and then your front piece will go on top of that. So it makes your back, there's no details to it. It's just the outline of the snowman, and you just put the glitter on there, then you put the piece on top of that. So it's no details at all to it, really. It's just an outline cut is all it is on the glitter.
Okay, so what I can tell you is be careful with some of that stuff. So, I mean, to give you an idea, our holiday sales, when we do our weekend shows, we pull in about $10,000 a weekend on sales, just on Christmas ornaments and Christmas decorations.
Right.
So what you're talking, if I'm envisioning it right, is about a product that was really popular about 3 years ago. It's kind of petering out. It might come back, but what we've been seeing lately is where you take your MD or your Baltic Birch for the backer. So if you can envision, let's see if I've got anything here. So say my phone, if this is the back of it, then we'll do a frame around it in another piece of 3 mil Baltic Birch, and then we'll do clear plexiglass over the face. But before we glue it together, we actually will infill with loose glitter inside of there. So you can shake it around. It makes it kind of like a little snow globe thing. And those have been really popular so far this year. So you might take that design file you have and try to rework it just a little bit, just to get it back up to the current trend that's going on. Like I said, those ones might come back. I don't know. The last couple Christmases have been kind of wacky, so it's kind of hard to judge anything this year. But for those who haven't started, we're already selling our Christmas stuff.
We have a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
We are pretty new at this, got our Nova 63 a couple days ago.
Okay.
And we are trying to figure out how it all works. One of my question is, we try to do test run, different squares and so on. And it seems for speed at 10 millimeters per second, it doesn't do anything. Is it normal?
That means that your minimum power is probably set to a level that's below your firing threshold. So I'm assuming you're talking about doing vector cuts, doing lines. So you need to have your minimum power set the same as your maximum power as a default rule. There are times when that changes, but at this point, just make the minimum the same as the maximum, and that should alleviate it. What happens is, when you're doing a vector, if the head moves at 10 millimeters per second or slower, it ramps down to the minimum power value. And that's to keep from overburning in corners and when making direction changes and in complex graphics, so you don't burn it all up. Since it's moving, dwelling there a lot longer because it's moving slower to make those direction changes. And then it ramps back up to the maximum power after it, exceeds 10 millimeters per second. So whenever you see that, that's typically what's happening. So you need to just check your minimum power setting.
Regarding speed, I noticed that, when I was doing some research, the Nova 63 top speed, I believe it's 1,000 millimeters per second. Mm-hmm. And then on some, cutting, it's recommended for thin plywood about 150. But it actually, when you try to, I would say, do some lines, the design skips some of the parts. Is it due to speed or something else?
The stepper missing steps is what it is.
Well,
going
we
too
don't.
fast for the direction change.
No,
Yeah,
that's
what I
not
would
it at all.
recommend while you're getting
If
started on it and just learning the machine is Brian came up with some great libraries on pre-done settings and everything. And they work, I'd say 98, 99% of the time for everybody. So what I would do is load, or Brian, if you want to pull that article up,
Is it
and
the
then just
material
load,
test the libraries?
yeah, the libraries. Load these libraries up, and then that way, if you're doing 3mm Baltic Birch, you can just grab that out of the library and assign it to the layer you're trying to cut, and it'll automatically put all the settings in for you. And that'll be a good way to get you up and going now, so you can get going, and then you can work on fine tuning it as you start to learn the laser a little bit more. But yeah, those libraries that Brian made they're phenomenal.
Because I downloaded some library from Thunder, and it shows like 2mm, 4mm plywood, but the ones we have, believe it's 3mm, which
Well,
is
see, these are not going to be easy buttons. We're not going to have a here you go, here's your settings for your material. These will get you in the parking lot of the ballpark, but nowhere near a home run. So you're going to have a lot of trial and error and actually getting intimately familiar with that machine as far as doing testing on your materials to really dial it in. So if you have 3mm material, you can pick the 2mm and then raise the power up a little bit or decrease the speed a little bit. Or you could pick a power that's, a thickness that's a little higher and assume that you can drop the power a little bit to get close. So you got to read between the lines and kind of think outside the box at the same time here when you're doing speed and power.
okay. Last question. We were doing coasters, and I believe we did 50mm per second speed and 60 power. Is it normal?
Are you talking about cutting or?
Yeah, cutting.
Well, it depends on the material. It depends on your focus. It depends on what lens you're using. It depends on a lot of things. If you're asking
for some reason, I thought it would be a lot faster,
Well, for engraving, you can hit 1,000mm per second if you want to, although realistically, you'll never go above 500 or 600. But on vector cutting, you'll never ever go 1,000mm per second. You're talking about two different things. When you're cutting materials, that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to cut those at 1,000mm per second, if that's what you're after. That's for the raster engrave speed, for the engraving speeds.
Yep. Yeah, and to give you an idea, so I've got a Nova 63. It's a 130 watt, and I'm cutting when I'm doing coasters out of 3mm Baltic Birch. I'm cutting at 47mm a second at 70% power. So just to kind of give you an idea.
Okay. Because we both purchased that for business, and as you know, time is money. So we want to make them as fast as we can, but apparently there's some limits. And also, just to confirm, I noticed that the smaller the design, the slower the speed should be. Otherwise, we're starting to get some issues with it. Correct?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can set your speed to 1,000 or 500 or whatever you want, but if you're doing something inside of a 10mm circle, some engraving or something like that, or cutting around it with the lines, vectors, where this comes into play, then it'll have to slow down. There's no possible way it could go any faster than 1 millimeter or 2 per second when it's making those really intricate design changes. Now, again, vectoring and rastering are totally two different animals too. So, have you scheduled your 1 hour training yet to try to go through some of that stuff? Or are you still in the process of?
No, we just unpacked the machine, and we're kind of excited about it. So we started testing on a very thin plywood, but we don't see some issues. So we're gonna schedule that 1 hour. Probably send an email regarding this today.
Yeah. Okay. So the other thing to watch also, you said that you were just using some thin plywood. Did you get it from an actual wood store? Did you get it from like Lowe's, Home Depot, or
lumberyard?
Okay. So
we
if
got
you look at
quite a few different ones, plywoods as well as MDFs.
Okay, so whenever you're dealing with plywood for lasering, what you want to do is you want to look at the edge of it so you can see all the layers. and you're looking for the bands between the layers, what you want to see is kind of a white look or see nothing at all. And that's the kind of glue that they use to put the layers together. And that's the kind that's best for lasering. If it's got like a dark brown or a black line between those layers, that's a different type of adhesive that you typically will see in like Lowe's and Home Depot wood. And it's really hard for the lasers to penetrate through that. And so just keep an eye on what kind of glue they're using. And like I said, you just tell by looking at the edge of the wood, whether it's a light colored glue or a dark colored glue. And that's really what you're looking for.
With the 3mm too, one thing I noticed you got to look out for is in the center core. Sometimes they use like a basswood or almost like a balsa wood almost. You want to make sure that it's a nice, yeah. You want to make sure it's a nice solid wood. If you can take your thumbnail and push it into it, put it back on the shelf and find something else. Because that stuff will actually ignite and catch fire and cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, most of us, at least what I recommend to people is you're looking for what's called Baltic Birch. That laser engraves the nicest and cuts the nicest. And what you want is the grade of a 4B or a 3B wood. That's what I would recommend, unless it's going to be, special projects where you're going to view it from both sides, then go up to a 2B wood, but that gets really expensive really fast. So typically a 4B or a 3B wood. And if you just ask your lumber yard, for a 3B, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. Basically, it's the way that the wood is finished on either side. So you split the numbers in half, so you'll have a 1B on one side and a 2B on the other side. And the 2B, you'll have some little football patches and stuff in it, which laser engrave just fine. They're just kind of ugly if it's right in the middle of your project. So typically we always bring in 3B wood.
And for Christmas ornaments, since you mentioned you make some, what is the preferred plywood thickness?
Everything I do for Christmas ornaments is 3mm.
Mm-hmm.
Or 1/8 inch, depending on where you're getting your wood from. Ours comes from Russia, so it's all metric.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all like that. Thank you.
All right.
Before we close out today,
this is what I'm talking about, Travis. Doing
what
stuff like that's some Christmas ornaments we're doing.
Yep, that looks nice.
And then I got the baseball right now. Baseball is really hot right now.
Yeah, cool. Baseball never really has been very hot up in Alaska. We're all about hockey.
Chasing that ball in that snow would be a little crappy.
See, I work for the school, so I got a built-in clientele. I got
there you go.
400 teachers that can hang these on their doors. That's what I'm working on this weekend.
There you go.
I was going to say, if anyone wants a fun project to really learn how to dial in your laser, go by, Goodwill or somewhere, grab some pairs of old jeans and practice laser engraving on jeans.
That's fun.
They are a blast to do because it turns the material white where you laser engrave. But if you do it ever so slightly too much, you'll completely disintegrate the material.
Have you done any longevity tests on that to see how many washings they withstand afterwards?
I've got
compared
some jeans
to one that doesn't
for 2 years.
Really?
So, yeah.
Cool.
As long as you don't go too deep, you just want to kiss the surface to change the color. You're basically you're almost basically just removing the dye from the fabric with the heat. Is almost kind of like what it looks like.
So if you think your wife has too many pairs of jeans, just run into her closet and grab some ones you don't like.
I did not tell you that, but if you want to, go for it.
Hey, Brian, I do have another